So as usual, we'll start with a 3 minutes of sitting.
And what you did last week was the introduction. And so now we start with eliminating all doubts.
No,
But-
we got halfway through the first section, eliminating doubts.
Oh,
Okie doke. Here we go. Okay, let's see.
could you tell me roughly in the couples book, Hideko and Alex, did you follow in your own? Did you change much? I mean, do you have the numbers like they use, or you don't? Or I'd like to
Well,
talk-
yeah, I haven't gone over how the chapter titles are different. They're somewhat the same, except they place numbers differently than Gunabhadra does, because they're working off the Tibetan manuscript.
right.
So it jumps a paragraph up or a paragraph down, and they combine 8 and 9 for some reason in one section, and don't differentiate 8 and 9. So there are things like that, but generally speaking, it's all in the right order, and mostly the numbers for their sections, although they have 4 chapters, and I'm working on a 3-section, 3-part model based on my reading of the entrustment section. They said they made a 4-chapter division instead of a 3-chapter division based on their reading of the Tibetan translation.
Yeah, what I, what I would like to do is just for fun for me, is to listen to you and more or less follow what you're doing, and
Right.
but more or less, I mean, I don't want you to get lost in what you're planning to do.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
my
so-
shit, so
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
want to interrupt you
all
or
right.
anything.
That's it. Just to help you out, we're picking up. Where are we here? 1, 2, 3, 4. We're picking up at page 62, the top of page 62
Oh, okay.
in the Waymans.
Yeah, all right.
Oh, hi, Mike. So just for the quick recap. Okay, so this is where we start. The title.
Mhm.
These are the 3 part titles. I use this as my subtitle, but these are the 3 sections, or the 3 parts, or the 3 chapters derived from the entrustment section. So then we see that part 1 is the severance of all doubts, because it's wherein is articulated the severance of all doubts. And then section 1, praising the virtuous merit of the Tathagata's true reality and primary meaning.
Right.
Now all the other people who use title sections truncate that. They don't use the whole section. For example, the Waymans have praises of the infinite merit of the Tathagata.
Right. Yeah,
Di-
that's fine.
Diana Paul uses the merits of the Tathagata's true doctrine, which is odd, but there it is. So I have used the whole thing. So then we have the first section, which is the story and
Right.
Queen Srimala's awakening, which we compared to the most interesting connection of Huineng's awakening. That is an awakening upon hearing the words of the Buddha spoken out loud. Huineng heard somebody reciting the Dharma Sutra. Queen Srimala read out loud the letter from her parents. So then on her awakening, she does these 2 verses, which are basically her awakening verse. And upon reciting those verses, the Buddha hears her across space and time, and then comes in the midst of the sky and appears.
Yeah.
Everybody sees him, and Srimala and her whole retinue, collectively by means of clear and pure minds, praise the Buddha's truly virtuous merit. So then what happens is we go into 8 stanzas here, where Queen Srimala is presenting her praise to the Buddha. And basically, this is why it's called praising the virtuous merit of the Tathagata's true reality.
Yeah, cool.
And his primary meaning. So she goes into these 8 stanzas, 8 gathas, 8 4-line stanzas. And we got down to number 5.
1,
Wait,
2.
5, 6, 7. Oh, we got through 5, and so we're going to pick up at number 6. Cover and protect us with your sympathy, which the Waymans have. May the Lord now protect me. Now,
Okay.
okay. So
Yeah.
first off, here I think we can. Does it help to have this up on the screen, or would you rather me just get rid of that and go back to the other?
No, I think it helps.
Okay.
I mean, it helps me. I mean,
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I would have it on the screen on my own end if you didn't pull it up.
Okay. So here we are. Cover and protect us with your sympathy and allow the seeds of Dharma to grow far and wide. In this world and in later births, we resolve that the Buddha always accept us. So an important thing here is this idea of seeds of Dharma. It's not necessarily a specific what's the word? It's not like a slogan that I've come across otherwise. Now, the Tibetans apparently changed that to seeds of enlightenment. I don't know why, because Bodhiruchi, see, here we're dealing with 3 translations in English. Well, there's more, but the 3 primary translations in English are either a translation from the Tibetan, which is also uses the Ratnakuta, and that's Wayman's. And then there's a translation directly from Bodhiruchi, that's Garma Chang. And then there's a translation of Gunabhadra by Diana Paul. And I'm using the Gunabhadra one. But what's happening is interesting to compare. When you compare Chang's Bodhiruchi, which is also from the Ratnakuta, and the Wayman's Tibetan, which is from the Ratnakuta, you see there are things that are different. And that difference points out the changes that the Tibetans made, not the changes that Bodhiruchi made. So that's I'll be pointing out those kinds of differences now and then. And the difference I was just pointing out is that Tibetans changed it to seeds of enlightenment, whereas Bodhiruchi and Gunabhadra use seeds of Dharma.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Seeds of Dharma, for me, evokes the idea of roots. Is that what he's talking about?
Yes, that's fast. That's good. That's the point. We're using agricultural metaphors from the time of the Buddha. So we're talking about seeds of Dharma. We're talking about virtuous roots, and those kinds of what I call the agricultural metaphors. Seeds is also used in that agricultural metaphor of it was the primary explanation of how Dharma could exist across space and time and be reborn, reignited, regrown in individual minds where people are living and dying. So you had the concept of Alaya Vijnana as the consciousness that exists outside of time, and that seeds are planted there that can be grown when in our current life grows from that foundation. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds of what that is all about, but we'll get to it later probably, with the issue of the Alaya Vijnana and the Tathagata Garbha as superimposed kinds of ideas. But in this sense, the seeds of the Dharma are how the Dharma gets planted from a generation to generation.
That's what I
And
want.
the seeds are basically, we hear the Dharma, the seeds are then planted in our mind, our individual mind, and then they grow far and wide as our manifestation of the Dharma ripens. And so the point in the next slide, in this world and in later births, the idea is that this is across all reincarnation, rebirths, transformations. And so the resolve here is that we resolve that the Buddha always accepts us. Now, I've already mentioned, and I'll mention it again, I use the pronoun we rather than the pronoun I. The Chinese translations don't distinguish between I and we. Diana Paul, very interestingly, for some of these, she uses we. She says, like, therefore we now honor you. And then in other places, she switches to I within these stanzas. I don't like that because I think it should all be one or the other. The Waymans have it strictly just I and me. But I see it because of what we've already talked about, she's sitting here with what it says here. Srimala, as well as her retinue, welcomed him with their heads and faces, bowing at his feet, and collectively, by means of clear and pure minds, praised the Buddha's truly virtuous merit. So because it says this collectively, and that they are there as an assembly, that's why I say Srimala is speaking on their behalf collectively. So that's why I've always used the we resolve. We resolve that the Buddha always accept us. Now we get to an interesting situation with the seventh stanza. Bodhi-ruchi does something rather strange here. This is how the way I've presented it here is how it appears in Gunabhadra. 8 stanzas, one after the other. But before this stanza, there's no indication here that the speaker is changing. But Bodhi-ruchi takes this stanza here, right here, moves it down, but right here after it says they stopped speaking and bowed their heads to the Buddha. He takes this stanza, puts it down here, and says, the Buddha then stated this verse. I have no explanation for it. Interestingly, Diana Paul keeps this format of all 8 verses here, but then right here between the two, in front of the 7th verse, she adds a parenthesis that says the Buddha. And the Waymans in theirs, they stop at the 6th verse, presenting him as verses. And then they have the Lord spoke forth, which is coming from Bodhi-ruchi. But it raises the confusion in my mind whether it actually comes from the Ratnakutta or from Bodhi-ruchi, because the Waymans keep the order of the stanzas 5, 6, 7, and 8, and just add before the 7th, the Lord spoke, and then before the 8th, they put Queen Srimala prayed. And so I don't see that as accurate. And so I'm presenting this as all of them 8 in the way that Gunabhadra presented it, as all 8 stanzas are Srimala speaking on behalf of the collective. For a long time, we have stood firmly by you, already in previous worlds have opened up enlightenment. Now again, we accept you, and in the lives not yet to come, we will even do so. I think I might change that. I don't know what do you think? I guess I should be consistent. I just noticed the inconsistency. I say opened up enlightenment instead of opened up awakening. Same word. It's
That's what
Bodhi.
you have done before.
I've been using awakening primarily, and so I don't know how this one got slipped in there.
Right.
But that's what I mean. It's opened up awakening.
Yeah.
We've opened up a line. So the point here is very fascinating to me. And I want to talk about this opened up awakening a little bit. Where are we here? No, that's the wrong place. I don't want, I'm getting ahead of myself. But then she makes, she's making the, in lives not yet come, we will even do so. So there she's making the profound commitment. We accept you, Buddha, as for now and forever.
Very great. Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
When I hear the phrase opened up enlightenment, what I hear is arouse the thought of enlightenment or arouse the thought of awakening? Or am I hearing have had contact with opening, or am I hearing like an anuttara samyak sambodhi?
Okay, that's good. I was going to talk about this in relation to the next section.
Well, please put it in the right place. I didn't mean to preempt.
That's all right. But it caught me by surprise because I remember I'd made the notes about this and I forgot which section I'd put the notes in. So it's going to be in, when we get to the next section, she begins every one of her 10 vows from today, henceforth, until awakening. So you see right there, this is
a bodhisattva vow, basically. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. She all her 10 bodhisattva vows, her resolutions, her great proclamations, begin with from today henceforth until awakening. So what we see is what you said. There is this spectrum of the initial bodhicitta, the initial awakening mind, to the anuttara samyak sambodhi. And so we see that, and that's what's going on here, that in previous worlds they have opened up awakening, they've opened up enlightenment. Obviously, it's like Danielle has said before, scratching the frost off the window. It's still a degree or measure of awakening, but it's not, the awakening that makes you a full-fledged Buddha throughout space and time. So I think that's what we see here in this. We've opened up enlightenment, we've opened up awakening in some degree, and that's what's made it possible for us to once again open it up upon hearing the Buddha's words. And so now again we accept you because we've done that in the past and we will in the future. So then I'll talk a little bit more about this, the staging of the awakening, because it comes up in the treatise on the Mahayana arousing of faith or awakening of faith, talks about this specifically. And that treatise is very much considered, D.T. Suzuki for one at least, considered that treatise as a sort of outline of the two sutras, Queen Srimala and Lankavatara. So I will come back to this question. We've made virtuous merits to manifest in the present and in remaining worlds. So it is that the multitude of virtuous roots are only for the resolve to see and accept. And here the virtuous roots, this is the first time I think the virtuous roots have been mentioned. And it's clear that the virtuous merits is what plants the seeds of Dharma to grow as the virtuous roots. And again, it's the virtuous. What's interesting about this is this comes from the transformation of Buddhism to the encouragement of lay practice as a little bit different, or not as exclusively a monastic practice. And so this is where this idea of the virtuous roots and virtuous merits come in. And we talked earlier about the measurable virtuous merits and the immeasurable virtuous merits. And this is again a sort of calling up again that paradox, because of the paradox of what I call the measurable and the immeasurable. Because to have a true foundation for awakening, we have in the causal realm, let's put it that way, in causes and conditions, there is a causal foundation, and that is virtuous roots. But we know that the Dharmakaya of the Tathagata exists as an acausal, or beyond space and time, and therefore awakening doesn't happen strictly by a causal formula. And that's where we're in this paradox that there's a measurable and an immeasurable. But without the measurable, we can't really point to anything as a foundation for awakening. And so really it's sort of like our attempt, I see it as our attempt as humans to say we live in a causal world, we live in causes and conditions. There is something that stirs up, plants the seeds of Dharma, waters them, grows, and the virtuous roots flower in awakening. But all of that has a quality to it that is immeasurable, inconceivable. And this idea of immeasurable and inconceivable reoccurs over and over and over in the sutra.
So, Gregory, when I've read other sutras, I've heard them talk about the voice hearers and the pratyeka, the one that I've gotten wrong so many
Pratyeka.
times. Pratyeka, in terms of measurable merit, and that the Bodhisattva's type of understanding is when you're leaping into the immeasurables.
Sort of, but this sutra here, well, you're again, Mike, you're real good at jumping ahead.
I'm sorry. I'll stop.
Don't be sorry. No, it's kind of fun because you're bringing up issues that we will get to, but the point is not to say don't do it, but just to say, yeah, that's coming. That's coming, man. We're getting there. When we get to the one vehicle section, section 5, and then the subsequent sections, there are lots of these kinds of distinctions between the contrived noble truths and the uncontrived noble truths. And that kind of measurable and unmeasurable merits come back. But, and we'll get to the distinction is that there are bodhisattvas, there are the listener disciples, I call them the listener disciples, but they're the hearers, the Shravakas, and the Pratyeka Buddhas. And then there are the bodhisattvas who are not very well advanced. And they are all in one group in Queen Srimala Sutra. They're in one group. And it's the they call it the bodhisattvas of great power, is how they're labeled in this sutra, who have gotten past the, basically those are the bodhisattvas who are in the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th stage of the 10-stage scheme of bodhisattva stages. So this sutra does make a distinction between the degrees of awakening of the bodhisattvas, as well as just between the two vehicle. So that's part of what this sutra is about, is it's saying there are the three vehicles, the listeners and the Pratyeka Buddhas as the two vehicles, and the third vehicle of the bodhisattvas. Not all of those bodhisattvas of the third vehicle have opened up to the one vehicle. And so that's where this sutra is coming from.
And so in a way, it's trying to kind of nudge you past complacency in that into some kind of bigger opening radical act.
I think that's, yeah, I think that's the purpose that we've talked about all along in terms of what this third turning of the wheel is about. Given that nudge. So, virtuous roots. Okay, so that's the last of it. Now, at this point, they're done praising the virtuous merits of the Tathagata, and they bow to the Buddha's feet. The Buddha from within the assembly then proclaimed the sign. Your praise of the Tathagata's virtuous merit of true reality, and that's the line where the title comes from, is by means of these virtuous roots undertaken over immeasurably numberless eons. In the midst of heavenly beings and humans being autonomously sovereign in every birthplace, you will always be able to see me appear before you and to praise like now without a difference. You shall repeatedly provide reverent service to immeasurable numberless Buddhas, passing through 20,000 numberless aeons. You shall attain to and be regarded as the Buddha designated universal light, a Tathagata worthy of offerings, perfectly knowing. So this is what is called proclaiming the sign. That's the jargon for when the Buddha says to a bodhisattva, you have reached the stage of certainty of your becoming a Buddha. And this is the most important part of the historical aspect of Queen Srimala in this sutra, because this is the first time that a woman has received the proclamation of the sign from the Buddha and being told that she will be regarded as a Buddha in the future life, universal light. And the Buddha universal light is Samanta Prabha, not Samanta Prabha, but Samanta Prabha. And that is the name that he proclaims she will be known. Now, again, I want to point out at the top, it says, at that time, all through the sutra, and you look at the bottom of the page right down here, at that time, those are used to indicate changes of perspective or changes of voice. So those are the indicators I'm using to when I make these kinds of paragraphs, sections, and changes of voice. Again, we have the issue here, the immeasurable numberless eons, and this whole question of immeasurability. You'll always be able to see me appear before you. So he's really saying we're connected now. And so this again, these are just the different ways he's praising her awakening as genuine, as very, very full. And
I also hear that I will always be before you now as the statement of a Tathagata that thus comes through everything, everywhere, all the time, that there's never a moment that's outside of that thusness.
I like
So
that,
see
yeah.
me here, see me now. It had this kind of almost like koan kind of effect in my brain. It was like, ah, my heart, you know.
No, I like that, yeah. Because that fundamentally is what Tathagata means, yes. And that's why, you know, in our Zen path, the universe is Buddha nature. The universe is Tathagata appearing before us.
Looking into our feet.
Yeah. So I don't have any idea what this 20,000 significance is. What I don't have any reference yet. I haven't found a reference to whether that number is specifically specific to anything. A Tathagata worthy of offerings, perfectly knowing, is just some of the epithets of the Buddha. There's 10 primary, and then there's a bunch of others. And this is just throwing 3 of them together.
So that some in this area, after he names Samanta Pravaha, at that time in your Buddha land, there will be no evil destiny. Besides, at the time, the sentient beings will stay on the path of done virtuous actions. Those beings will not have sickness or old age or disagreeable disturbances. And even the names of the path of unvirtuous actions will not be mentioned. You probably have it someplace here.
Yes, the next paragraph.
Let's see.
Right here where it says.
Right, the future Buddha land.
That future Buddha land is without the various evil destinations. And I put, this is one of my few times I've put in brackets because I wanted to make sure that it's understood that evil destinations is referring to rebirth. The vexations of old age, sickness, and decay, and the suffering of not reaching the meaning. And there are even no names for the paths of the non-virtuous evil karmas. The multitude of beings of that future land will be endowed with, in all cases, the forms, the powers, the long lives, the 5 desires, and the full joy that surpasses the various heavenly beings of the Parinirmita Vasavartan heaven. In that future Buddha land, the various multitudes of beings are solely great vehicle ones, and by variously having cultivated habits of virtuous roots, that multitude of beings in all cases congregate in that future. So this is pretty fascinating stuff here. Buddha land, or Buddha field, we can call it the Buddha land or Buddha field. I just like to point out, it's okay, we have here that future Buddha land is without the various evil destinations. Now, let's recall the Vimalakirti Sutra, where Shariputra was saying the Buddha land is always pure and has always has these great descriptions like what immediately follows here. But he says to the Buddha, I'm looking at this Buddha land. Is your land not pure like the others? Because when I see it, I see a bunch of troubles and tribulations. You know, it's called the Saha world, where we have to bear all the burdens of old age, sickness, and decay. And the Buddha says, well, if you don't see if the clouds are in front of the sun, and the moon, is it the sun or moon that's the problem? Or is it the clouds? And he says, oh, it's the clouds. And he says, well, the same with Buddha lands. If you're blind, do you blame the not being able to see the purity of the Buddha land, or do you blame the blindness? And so at that point, the Buddha touches his toe to the ground. He places his toe on the earth. And the Buddha land is revealed in all its glory and splendor, and in the way that this is described. And then when he removes his toe, it reverts back to the other thing. So the point, I think the relevance of that is the fact that the Buddha land is not a different destination. When it says the various evil destinations, it's talking about the wheel of birth and death, which we know as the wheel turning in the realm of desire. So there's 2 schemes, a five realm or world scheme and a 6 world scheme. So I just want to take a little side trip on this issue. There are 3 realms: the realm of desire, the realm of form, and the formless realm. Now, each of these are realms that are, I don't want to say contaminated, but they are determined or conditioned by the three poisons. The realm of desire is the six worlds in the wheel of life in the realm of desire. These are the devas, the asuras, the humans, the animals, the pretas, hungry ghosts, and the hell beings. In the five scheme, the the devas and the asuras are lumped together and not separated as just the deva realm. But in this wheel of desire realm, all three of the poisons, desire, greed, and ignorance, are prevalent and determinative. In going to the realm of form, this is sometimes called the heavens of the realm of, so there are heavens in the realm of desire. In the realm of form, the poison of desire has been defeated. And there only remains the poisons of aversion and delusion. In the
I have a
form,
question, Gregory.
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. If I'm reading this sutra for inspiration for my practice, or it was given with that intention, that it would be inspiring for people to practice and then this paragraph would be something that would inspire me to trust and follow Queen Srimala so that I would be reborn in the Buddha world, Buddha land, the future Buddha land, where all these afflictions have been removed. Is that what this is about?
It's very similar to, yes, it's
like the Pure Land kind of thing.
Yes, there's a distinct similarity between what we know about the Western paradise of Amitabha Buddha,
right.
And this presentation of the Buddha land that Queen Srimala as Samantaprabha Buddha will be.
Could I say one more thing?
Yeah.
If there's anybody that's going to be a Buddha, which she's getting the sign that she will be a Buddha, full Buddha, and she'll have this Buddha land. And we know that the Buddha who's talking to her also has a Buddha land, and we're living in it. And he touched his toe, and we could see the reality, which is everything is pure and undefiled, and he lifts his toe, and we've got all the afflictions to contend with. Is that basically a scheme of how all Buddha lands are?
No. That's the point.
Okay.
All Buddha lands are different. In terms of the central Buddha and how they operate.
Oh, fascinating.
So like this one is the Saha world. And the Buddha comes to this Saha world and doesn't just, people are born in this Buddha land as humans with afflictions, with misunderstandings, with all of this. And this Buddha has the, I kind of want to say assignment, but or chore, or he deals.
He was generous enough to descend to the Saha world and do this hard work.
Right, exactly. But in these other worlds that are the worlds of the hopefulness of being in a world that's not like this Saha world, we get these descriptions where the vexations and things are not happening, and the Western paradise where you hear Amitabha, you'll be awakened, and here you're in a place where they don't even have names for the evil paths. So
Okay, thanks for
Yeah.
clearing that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Carol, I want to
Gregory-
just add one more question on your thing because I love it. I've heard the phrase, if you are to become a bodhisattva, you have to start to cultivate your Buddha land by adorning your own Buddha land.
Hmm.
I've heard that in a few sutras. I don't know if you have any response to that.
I'm not real familiar with that, but I think I don't know. I'm just fans. I think Dogen might have mentioned something like that in one of his. I don't know, but yeah, it's sort of like that again. Is we have to manifest here and now, not in some future. So that's the way I would take that. I've heard that, but I don't have any sense of where I heard it from. But yeah, I take it as we have to manifest it.
So this land, it's in the couple's book, is any sentient being born in that Buddha land will surpass the Paramirta Savartat deities in pleasure, glory of shape and color, splendor on the sense objects of form, sound, odor, smell, tangibles, and ecstasy of that sentient being in all enjoyments. That's that world that you're talking about.
No. Well, yes, the Buddha land is what's being described, and it's saying that the Paranirmita Vasavat in heaven doesn't even compare to that.
Okay.
So this is where I was trying to distinguish between heavens and Buddha lands. In the realm of
In Pure Land, they call it Tushita heaven. Is there any?
no, that's different.
That's different. Okay.
Tushita heaven is not the Pure Land. So what's going on here is the evil destinies are the evil destinations are the hell beings, the hungry ghosts, and the animals, and human life when you're born, with disease and poverty and stuff. The good destinations are human life born with in a good family that's not suffering and diseased, or in the Deva realms. So in this Buddha land, it's not a land of that where you circulate among all 6 of the destinations. You only circulate between the humans and the devas if you're in that land. Now, this reference to the Parinirmita Vasavartan heaven is part of this scheme at the top of the circle or the wheel in the Deva realm. There's the Indian cosmology that was adopted was 6 heavens, and each heaven was surpassed the other in terms of glory and stuff. And the 6 heavens, the first one is the 4 guardian great king heaven, the heaven of the 4 guardians of the great kings that watch over our world. The second heaven is the heaven of the 33, and there's 33 devas in that heaven. We've often heard of that. The third heaven is the heaven of Yama, the Lord of the dead. The 4th heaven is the Tushita heaven. And this is the heaven that Maitreya is waiting in the future. It's also the heaven where
Paradise, huh? That's also called Western paradise.
No. Maitreya is not in the Western paradise. Maitreya is in the Tushita heaven.
Oh, I
The
thought
Western
not.
paradise is a Buddha land. It's not a heaven in this
So the idea is that
Buddha
the
land.
Tushita heaven is still in the karmic cycle of birth and death, loss
Yes,
and rebirth, whereas the Buddha land would transcend and include all heavens and have all of the glories within them, like the gems of Indra's net,
right,
holding truths. Blah, blah,
right.
blah.
Yeah, seeing the Buddha land is seeing past this illusions of the wheel of the circle, going through the
So if you're in the Buddha land, you're not in heaven and you're not in hell, and it's a different level of existence.
You're wherever you are.
You're wherever you are, but you're not in heaven or hell. It's not a place of heaven or
Right.
hell.
You don't see it that way.
Right.
Because if you see it that way, then you're not in the Buddha land.
So that's why it's not the Tushita heaven or some other heavenly realm. It's a Buddha land.
Right. Right. Now the Tushita is also where the Buddha's mother went upon her death. She's also in the Tushita heaven. And the legend is that upon his enlightenment, the Buddha went to the Tushita heaven and told his mother and the Devas there the Avatamsaka Sutra, taught the Avatamsaka Sutra there in the Tushita heaven. And then when he came back to the human realm, he then taught the regular. The fifth one is called Nirma Paratis, and the sixth one, the highest one, is this one that's just been referred to, the Pari Nirmita Vasavartan heaven. And it's a fascinating heaven. The reason I just want to go into this is because it has this kind of funny stuff going on around it. The name means the heaven ruling over the will, wishes, and desires of others. So basically, it's sort of like the highest heaven possible in the Kama Dhatu, the realm of desire. The most powerful devas reside there, including Maheshvara, who's also known as Shiva. This is where Shiva resides. And Mara Papiyan, the king of the Maras. Now, Mara Papiyan is going to make an appearance later on in Queen Srimala Sutra. So that's why I wanted to point out that this is the heaven where both Shiva and the king of the Maras, Mara Papiyan, reside. And going above and beyond this heaven, you're no longer in the realm of desire and you enter the realm of form. So in a way, it's equivalent to, it's an equivalent parallel to Olympus in the Greek system, or Asgard in the Norse system, in terms of the highest of the heavens. And the idea that it's the heaven ruling over the will, wishes, and desires of others. Mara wants to rule over the will, wishes, and desires of others to prevent us from awakening. Shiva wants to rule over the will, wishes, and desires of others so that we will praise Shiva, praise the gods, and live a life according to the gods. Neither one of them really strictly supports awakening in that sense. And in this case, it's not Shiva who comes to help the Buddha. It's Shakya or Indra. So, and they don't live in this heaven; they live in a lower heaven. So,
That's a beautiful teaching point. I really, really love that idea that in the heavens, the gods want to rule over the wills. And then part of the transcendent is letting kind of go of that ruling. That's so beautiful. I don't know. find that touching.
So then this section ends at the time that Queen Srimala was able to receive the sign. An immeasurable multitude of beings, various heavenly beings, as well as humans, resolved to be born in her land. The world-honored one proclaimed the sign for them all, that in all cases they should be bound to be born there. Now, the way I read this, proclaim the sign for them all, is not that he's saying they are all going to be Buddhas, although that is an interpretation we could derive from it. But I also see it as he proclaimed the sign for Srimala for them all, so that they could all know of her and the Buddha land that will arrive. And in all cases, they should be bound to be born there. So this is totally in tandem, parallel to the whole idea of Amitabha and the Western paradise, in that people seek to be born there for their benefit. So that is the first section, and we've seen that severance of all doubts, praising the virtuous merit of the Tathagata's true reality. Was there something? Oh, what is that? Oh, maybe it's in the next section. Where do we get the title? Oh, I think it must be in.
I always feel the many Buddha lands as like some kind of wondrous version of the multi-world, the multi-universe theory in physics, you know, all these
Right.
overlaying universes of joy, kind of maybe becoming translucent to one another at times, you know.
Well, this is you know, in we've all seen this in the various Mahayana sutras. This whole thing about it becomes very psychedelic, and wondrous in that way. What's that, Carol? I couldn't hear. Okay. There's a line here. Okay, it's at the end of section 2, not the end of section 1. I thought I had misplaced it. Okay, shall we continue into section 2?
10 great vows.
Right. Now, again, here, I don't use the word vows. I use the word proclamations.
Mhm.
She's proclaiming it.
Right.
And then the next section is resolutions. And some of the translators translate both words as vows. The Waymans translate resolutions as aspirations, and then use for proclamations the vows. It's, again, I'm trying to do something, you know, I'm putting the little wonder wheel twist on it by calling it the Great Proclamations instead of the Great Vows, because I'm looking at this not as to me, there's a connotation of the vow as like something I'm going to do, you know, our New Year's vows, our New Year's resolutions. I'm going to do it in the future. And to me, I like the term proclamation, that she is proclaiming. And one reason I use that is that this is Gunabhadra's, it's a more literal translation of the word that Gunabhadra uses. It's also the more literal translation of the Sanskrit word that is usually interpreted as vow in English.
So the proclamation is saying something is so.
Yeah,
The meaning of the word, a proclamation is, this is the way it is.
right.
Vow is the way it will be.
Yeah. That's the nuance that I'm trying to put in here.
Yeah.
And let's not play, she's a queen too. She does
I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point.
Yeah. So this is Queen Srimala's proclamations.
Right.
How many of them are there? There's 7, 8?
There's 10.
Yeah,
Now,
okay, let's go.
Now this is the 10 is a significant number. It's also in Samantabhadра's 10 Bodhisattva vows is the most well-known collection of 10. But the idea being that when a bodhisattva, we all have bodhisattva vows. You know, we do them when we do our rakasu. But when a bodhisattva receives the sign, it's typical that they make these kinds of 10 proclamations specific to them and their practice. And so the 10 bodhisattva vows of Samantabhadra are different than the 10 bodhisattva vows or great proclamations of Queen Srimala, because each of the 10 are specific to their practice. And for us, we then can orient towards these vows, these proclamations, as how, in terms of how they resonate with us and how we have affinity with them. In other words, not everybody would be equally inspired by Samantabhadra's 10 vows, 10 proclamations, as they might by Queen Srimala's. So it's not, the point I'm making here is just that when you hear about the bodhisattva vows of Samantabhadra, some people think that those are bodhisattva vows that every bodhisattva shares. And it's not the case. It's that they are the vows of that Samantabhadra made, just like these are the vows that Queen Srimala makes. And it's for us either to make our own vows or to see how we have affinity and are inspired by these vows. Now, Diana Paul calls them the 10 ordinational vows. There's no term ordination in there. She just adds that to make it clear that in her perspective, these are the vows that make a bodhisattva who has been given the sign a fully ordained bodhisattva. The Waymans just call them the 10 great vows. And they leave out the term inconceivably great proclamations. And I just want to point out again, here's that word inconceivable popping up, and it's gonna pop up quite a few times. Actually, I made a list somewhere of how many times this term inconceivable is going to pop up. It pops up in titles, and it pops up in these kinds of adjectives. And so again, this is a theme here, that we're not supposed to see these as limited. They are inconceivably great. They're not just great, they're inconceivably great.
So how can something so inconceivable be written down in concepts and words?
That's the paradox.
They're just concepts and words. How could they be inconceivable?
Right. Well, that's the paradox, and that's why I relate this whole use of this word inconceivable throughout the sutra as directly related and pointing to the Zen motto of no thought, the thought of no thought.
Well, the question that Michael is posing, Mike, is Bodhidharma, 4 main statements, and it says that the Zen tradition is not depending on any of this. Also,
Except for the fact that those mottos are words. It depends on those words to share the motto.
Right. No, absolutely.
Right. And so that's exactly how it all is. And I think that this repetition of the word inconceivable in various aspects, the point of that is to point out that aspect that we're not to look in the words or at the words. We're to look at what's inconceivably communicated by the words. Now we have the 10 vows here. The vows we can look at as two groups, the first 5 and the second 5. So we'll look at the first 5. The first 5, I call them her basically personal vows of her personal practice. From today henceforth until awakening, I do not arouse an offending mind toward that which are the received precepts. The offending mind could be some of them translated as false or violation of the precepts, offending the precepts.
Violating morality.
Right. Yeah, they use morality instead of precepts. Again, now here's this henceforth until awakening. I'm just going to note quickly in the treatise on the Mahayana arousing of faith, it talks about original enlightenment and originating or initiating enlightenment. And in the initiating and originating of enlightenment, that's the enlightenment that we come to realize original enlightenment. And it has 3 degrees. The first one is apparent or resemblance of enlightenment. The second one is approximate or very near to enlightenment. And the third one is the complete or ultimate enlightenment. And these are the 3 phases of the initiation of enlightenment, from the bodhicitta to the unexcelled enlightenment. But they are the way the enlightenment works in the human realm of space and time, always in the context of original enlightenment, which causes so much confusion from people who about that. And of course, original enlightenment is the state of the Dharmakaya and so that's the reason I'm saying that is that this is what this sutra is all about, presenting that. It doesn't use the terminology original enlightenment, but it does use the terminology of the Dharmakaya of the Tathagata as the equivalent to what we always call original enlightenment. Second one, from today until awakening, I do not arouse a prideful mind toward all the honored seniors, elders. The Tibetans changed this to teachers because they're into the guru system. So they just read this as the honored gurus are the honored teachers. Third one.
We're free to arouse that prideful mind about freshmen?
No. I do not arouse a hating mind toward all the multitude of beings, because that's what you just jump to the next one. That would be a hating mind toward all the beings, and you're calling them freshmen is denigrating them. I do not arouse an envious mind toward another's bodily form, as well as their external multiple endowments. I use the word endowments rather than in possessions, because it's talking about their bodily form, whether they're pretty or ugly or whatever. Of course, envious, then we would think of it as pretty. but the endowments are also endowments of skills as well as possessions. And number 5, I do not arouse a stingy mind toward internal and external things. Now, these 5, I relate directly to the 5 speech precepts. The offending mind is the false speech, lying. The prideful mind is idle talk, flattery. Hating mind is harsh speech, insults. The envious mind is slander and treachery. The stingy mind is covetousness. And what this adds is sort of like a target that these things are often aimed at. So I'm not going to offend the precepts. I'm not going to speak against the precepts. I'm not going to say false things about the precepts. And I'm not going to be prideful towards, arouse a prideful mind toward the honored seniors. Basically, I'm not going to say that they're dumb because I know better, kind of thing. This last one is interesting. The 5th one. I'm not going to arouse a stingy mind toward internal and external things. This is what Gunabhadra's version says. And Bodhi Ruchi's version and the Tibetan version changed that. And so because the Bodhi Ruchi version and the Tibetan version change it in the same way, I take that as the evidence that this change was made in the Ratnakuta version of the sutra, not in the version of the sutra that Gunabhadra was using. And what they do is they change it to, I shall not allow any thought of covetousness, no matter how meager the donated food. So they change this idea of internal and external things to just the single external thing of donated food. It's interesting. Diana Paul has a footnote about this. Her footnote, she changes it, I will not be stingy, although I have little sustenance. And she says, Gunabhadra has, I will not be attached to inner and outer things. That she, the translator, has chosen Bodhi Ruchi's text instead of Gunabhadra's for the sake of clarity. So I don't see that as making anything clearer, because I see it as sticking a too narrow interpretation. It's not just about being stingy toward the food that's donated.
Yeah. It's
about being stingy toward all the internal and external things. And again, in this context, we know that the Bodhisattva, one of the primary things of the Bodhisattva vow is to not be stingy with the Dharma. And so that's what I take here when we're talking about internal and external things. The word things is dharmas. And so it could be translated as internal and external dharmas, as well as things. So it has this double entendre of it means I will not be stingy with things, the food I'm given, the robes we're given, but also I will not be stingy with the Dharma that I have access to. So all these 5 I take as really basically her setting out her practice. I'd call it her meditation practice. This is how she, as Wei Nang talked about Zen as not being disturbed by things. That was in the Platform Sutra, he defines Zen as not being disturbed by outward things. These 5 are showing her practice at not being disturbed, not arousing a mind that is offended or offensive, not arousing a mind that's filled with pride, not arousing a mind that hates or is averse to people. not arousing a mind that's envious, not arousing a mind that's stingy. So this non-arousal of these kinds of mind, I take as her statement of what her personal meditation practice is. Then we go on to the next 5, and maybe we should stop here and deal with these next ones next time.
They get longer and longer. The
Right,
10th,
yeah,
like,
yeah. These
normal.
5 are all just like a couple lines, and then each one gets longer and longer and is more involved. One thing I want to point out, though, is that the 10th one, we have this phrase, I accept the real Dharma. That phrase is key to this whole sutra. In fact, that is the second most important phrase, in my view, to the phrase, the one vehicle. And we will see in the following section, the following part 2, section 4, is all about this acceptance of the real Dharma, giving more nuance and cross-references and metaphors for what accepting the real Dharma is. But here there's a threefold transition where accepting the real Dharma is the 10th of these 10. It also becomes integral to the next 3. Each of these has accepting the real Dharma as part of it. And then it becomes the 4th one is articulating the inconceivable acceptance of the real Dharma. So here we come back to the inconceivable adjective and saying that we have these inconceivable great proclamations, and they lead directly to understanding the inconceivable acceptance of the real Dharma. So I just wanted to highlight that as where we're headed. And then we can pick up from there. These 5 are the very interesting social applications of her great vows compared to the personal applications of how she's not going to arise those 5 kinds of mind. Now the other 5 are how she's going to relate to people in the world socially and become her vows in social consciousness. Okay, any questions or things? This is, I think, the right stopping point for now.
Yeah, it's cool. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. I have a question that I think maybe just not really answerable, but just interesting to hear if you have any thoughts, or you may not. When I read those 5, it feels like if I were to hang out with them for a long time, they would kind of open in different ways, and different facets of them have. Has that been your experience of it?
Yeah, I think the point is, there's several ways. One is to see that it's focused. I will not be stingy toward this. There's a focus for each of those. But then the other thing is to just take that focus away, and then what does it mean to arouse an offending mind, to arouse a prideful mind? These are again very, very similar to our regular precepts.
And our regular precepts keep on opening and moving and shifting, and
Right.
I mean, that's for sure. I mean,
Right.
remember the first time you took your precepts, and if you have the notes of what you mentioned during that time, and what you wouldn't mention now if you do the retaking ceremony, would be quite
Right.
astonishingly different. Well, maybe not that astonishing. Maybe some of them.
Inconceivably different.
Right.
Well, I remember how puzzling in some ways the precepts were to me in the very beginning.
Mhm.
That's getting off topic to go. Yeah, I mean, it has changed tremendously, and they're still very mysterious, these precepts, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember this beautiful woman. I have no idea where she is now. She might be dead. She was the oldest person in the group here. I don't think that you were around, Mike. She had white hair, short hair. She bought all those beautiful blue cups that we have, 4 of each. The original cups that we had, we still have quite a few, most of them. She was from way up north, North Washington State, or Port Arthur, or something like that. And when she took the precepts, she was a riot. She was so, and not misusing sex. She said, "Well, I wouldn't mind misusing it once in a while. It's been so long, you know, that it's like." And it was so appropriate, you know. It was not. It was just very sweet.
Oh,
And I thought, how wonderful, you know. I mean, just a joke, you know, but and yet, you know, it was sort of so personal, you know, so so revealing of just her
yeah.
own goofiness.
Reminds me of what I said about that precept. I said, I take up the way of the birds and the bees.
All right.
That's pretty,
All right.
well,
Well, thank you very much, Gregory.
Sure.
yeah,
Thank you all.
thank you. Thank
Great
you.
work, man. It's
Yeah,
remarkable.
it is remarkable.
Patience. I mean, there's something. It's some that kind of work is just so terribly foreign to me. You know.
Get to be the beneficiary without
Right. Yeah. You know. And
tangling my
yeah,
mind up like that.
I'm tempted of rereading the Awakening of Faith in Mahayana. You know, I haven't read it for a long time.
Well, I've translated that one too.
Yeah. It's so amazing that the translation, you know, the translation that I have,
Yeah.
it's like I always was so surprised. I says it's written in such a modern way, you know, and it's such an old text. And of course, it was the people that translated, the Japanese person, used very modern expression, but it had such a different flavor of any sutra, of anything.
Right, right. He
You're,
also, yeah, he loses a little bit of, as a treatise, it's incredibly outlined. And in his translation, Harada,
all right.
His translation loses some of the depth and degree of how outlined that treatise is, going through each
Hakeda.
Hakeda, right?
Hakeda. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yoshito Hakeda. All right.
Maybe
All right,
maybe
Carol.
that'll be the second class.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, Greg. I love you all dearly.
All right, thank you. Thank you for
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Oops.